All right. I think I'm ready.
All right, I am ready.
So, do you remember why you initially started Dancraft?
So I had to think about this, and there was no reason why. I just started playing Minecraft about probably a week before Dancraft came to be, and the day that Dancraft was created, I was in art class, I think it was. I must have been 14 at the time, and my friend was talking about how he had started his own server. I think it was called Webcraft or something like that. I was like, well, I like creating things. That sounds like a fun thing to pursue. So I came home, and that was what spawned Dancraft. Dancraft started out like literally, I think I made it in a night. It was literally just like a world edited stone sphere as spawn with like some protection on it, and then that was literally it. But as more and more people played it, I sort of developed from that into like a sort of survival server, and then a little bit later on, I think it became a faction server. So to answer the question, there wasn't really much reason behind creating the server. It was more so just like Minecraft was a game I enjoyed playing, and a friend said running the server was fun, and I enjoyed creating stuff. Yeah, there was no sort of motive behind it.
So, when you made Dancraft, I was just wondering how you came up with such a unique and um, crazy name.
Well, you see, there were many days, weeks of brainstorming. These sort of names, they don't come to mind easily. Require months and months of planning.
And how many people worked on Dancraft when you first started? Was it just you?
When it first started, yeah, it was just me. Although there's a longer answer to that if you want the whole rundown of everyone that's worked on Dancraft, or the main people. There's loads of people that worked on Dancraft over the years, but I can give the long answer if you'd like.
Yeah, we'll get more into that later. Like, what about who was the first people you like got working on the project? Like, what kind of people did you hire? Because I know the Legend Cookie became mod, and that's the first guy I could find. But like, did you hire any other developers or staff along the way?
So there were, along the way, there were freelance developers who I paid for work, but they were more actual developers by their job, who also happened to knew how to, make plugins and stuff like that. So those were probably earlier on in the scene, but they were nothing to do with the actual server themselves. At first, it was more of just a hobby project. So the only people who really helped out were friends and people like that. The Legend Cookie was the first sort of moderator. Yeah, before that, there wasn't anyone who, would say worked for Dancraft or was even staff on Dancraft. There was a close friend of mine named Sammy who did quite a bit of work for Dancraft, but again, it was when Dancraft was tiny. Like there were like five players on was a big thing, and that's the scale of things back then.
Is that Captain Carrot?
Captain Carrot is me.
Oh, that is you? I always thought that was one of your
I
friends.
could not remember. No, I haven't spoken to Sammy in literally years. Like over probably 6-7 years ago was the last time I spoke to him. So his username is not fresh in my memory, unfortunately.
I mean, that's sooner than the last update on Dancraft.
Oh, all right. Okay. I should have got some burn wipes or something, some Vaseline.
So when did Dancraft like first blow up?
First blow up. It was. I looked into this when you sent over the questions, and I thought the timeline on this was a lot longer than it actually was. I thought Dancraft had been running for months, maybe even a year before it blew up. But Dancraft launched in either September or October 2012, and I think December 2012 was when Dancraft was hitting close to 100 players. And I think the first time Dancraft had a lot of players on was when I first bought advertising slot on a server list. You could sort of buy this one, allowed you to sort of bid for like hourly slots. And I remember we'd had a few sort of rank purchases, and the server's bank account, as I put it, was very, very low. So it was a very risky purchase to spend, the server's money on this advertising slot. But when I bought that, like, a lot of players joined almost instantaneously, and I was like, whoa, Dancraft has the potential to be really popular. And I think from there on, after I discovered sort of the power of advertising, and more money went into that, Dancraft started to grow.
Right. After that, didn't you end up hiring, I forget who it was. I think initially you did Buildo 40, and he played Skywars and a couple of his friends.
That was closer to, that would have been early summer 2013, I think. Bodil first came about when Skywars was released, which I think that was in, pardon me, early-ish 2013.
I have the date if you want me to.
Oh, really? Do you? Yeah, what was it?
June 30th.
Oh, okay.
He also did PvP race on June 2nd.
June 2nd. What did he do? Was
PvP race.
PvP race?
Wait, I think that's just what it called it. I think it is Kit PvP.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's more likely, yeah.
Yeah, it's very nostalgic looking at those videos, yeah.
Especially the one with deadlocks in me. Just can't get over it.
With deadlocks?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
I was really sad because he like completely removed his entire channel and all the videos are gone. But I managed to find my perspective.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that was a funny one. That was more, I think he put us on the spot to quickly come up with something. And YouTubers aren't one to, they're the ones in control. So you have to work around them, really.
Yeah, that base he found was crazy.
Yes.
Did you picture Dancraft getting as much attention as it did initially?
Never. Like, as I said, like, I didn't have, you don't really think about things when you sort of create them. Like I said, when Dancraft was created, like, it was literally just, I thought it'd be like a 1 or 2 night thing. I'll just create a server, build some stuff, and that'll be it. So I had no idea that Dancraft would go on and still be here in 2020, albeit in a different form, but
How did watching your community grow like that feel?
So the thing is, I think you never really stop to watch when you're involved, and I imagine even players, you don't look at it from an outside perspective and watch stuff grow. You're heavily involved and everything's always changing, but it's only when 2-3 years later you look back and you see how much things have grown, if that makes sense. So at the time, you would hit a new player count, or things would grow, but I didn't really look at it as, I didn't have much feeling about it, really, I guess I would say. It was always on to the next thing. Things were always busy.
Right. You were just trying to maintain that community and like keep growing as much as you can.
Yeah. So basically, I never really sat back and looked at how much things were growing. It was always moving on to how can we make things grow more.
Did you only hire freelance developers, or who was working on the updates and bug fixes for Dancraft?
So there's one person who was not a freelance developer, who was I don't think many people even know of him, but he was a really big asset to Dancraft. His name was Rob, RB2750 was his username. Around 2013, 2014, Rob was doing a lot of development behind the scenes. He was doing most of the development at that period of time. He made he did a lot of bug fixes. He developed like big features for Dancraft. I think he solely developed Hunger Games. There was, and Dangames. The first version of Dangames was developed by Rob. So yeah, Rob was the biggest sort of non, just like on a work basis developer Dancraft had.
Who
But
came up
later
with
on,
sorry.
sorry.
Who came up with the concept of Dangames? Was it you or him?
Dangames was an adaptation of a mini game on a server called Archer Games, or the mini game was called Archer Games, but the server shut down. And I always thought it was a great idea. I mean, it was. I mean, I don't know if I'd call it original, but it was basically just Hunger Games with explosives and overpowered gear. So yeah,
Little Yoinksky.
Huh?
A little Yoinksky. Just took it from.
Yeah, so it wasn't. I don't think either of us came up with the idea, but it definitely sort of. As time went on, it did become more of its sort of own thing, more of the Dancraft take on it.
I do have to commend you on making another original creative name like Dancraft.
Yeah.
What do you think your favorite update has been that you released?
Oh, I think I would have to say V3, probably because it was the most successful update. That was the update that took place in summer 2013, or right at the end of it, when the factions everyone calls old school factions was released. So yeah, V3 I'd say.
V3 was the best. How often would you check in on the server?
I would check in on the server, and I still do daily. I mean, maybe not so much daily in depth anymore, but I do always check every day. The Discord, things are running. But back then, it was an ongoing. Every day I was awake, I was checking on Dancraft. There was a lot of work that went into Dancraft. So yeah, there wasn't even when I was on vacation, I'd be like watching Dancraft, seeing how things were going, because you never could really take your eyes off it. Things would go down, there'd be issues, things needed managing. So every day, really.
What about the periods where it just felt like there was no communication going on, and a lot of the community just felt abandoned, and there's just like a lot of hackers roaming?
Yeah, so those periods, I probably did still check in on Dancraft every day, even if just for 5 minutes, just to check things were running, everything was up. But admittedly, a lot of the management tasks, like dealing with reports and things like that, were put to the side. And then updates, only really major changes were ever made. So yeah, those periods, a lot less time was dedicated towards managing the server. But I was still around. It wasn't like I completely disappeared off the face. Although to everyone else, it would have seemed like I disappeared off the face of the earth. The server was still being, managed. I mean, someone's got to pay the bill every month.
What do you think the players thought of you as like an owner or a person?
I think there were mixed opinions. I think mixed opinions. I think some players were very hard to please. There were some players, it didn't really matter what happened, there would have always been a problem. Or if they wanted a particular update, they would have got the update, and then a week later it would have been on to the next thing. But there were a lot of players who I think didn't mind me. I think all in all, I don't think my reputation is terrible. But I'm sure it is very mixed. I'm sure there are people who don't like me so much, and I'm sure there are people who are happy with, what I did for the server.
Do you think some of those like thoughts are rightfully so?
Do I think some of the what are rightfully so?
Some of the mixed thoughts that people have.
I think everyone's thought is valid, to be honest. To one person might think, an update was the best thing that happened to the server. Another person, it might have made them quit. And both of those opinions are equally valid. So yeah, I don't think I would. I've always been very, open to debate and understanding. I think I've never really. I think someone is entirely valid to have a bad or good opinion of me. I think that's what it is, an opinion. Yeah.
Gotcha. What players do you remember from the server? I like still ringing a bell to this day. Besides me, of course.
Players. Oh. I don't know if there's any. I wouldn't want to give a name because there are loads of names, but no names. There's no names specifically that I look back to as like a massive event, and I wouldn't want to put focus on one specific name that just comes to mind because I feel like it puts too much emphasis on a single person. But there were definitely characters, people who would always come up, whether it be they were rule breaking or good people who want to contribute to the community. There are a lot of people who even message me to this day and ask, how can I help? I like Dancraft, and they just want to dedicate their free time to help the server. And I think those sort of players are, the players I remember, because they have nothing but goodwill for the server.
Did you have your favorites? Like people you enjoyed seeing interact with the community? Or just like when you saw them on? You don't have to name names.
Yeah, there were people. Yeah, there were people. It would be like, oh, what are they up to? You just knew. An hour later, there'd be a report about something they've said, or there's going to be havoc wrecking on the server, or I'm going to be getting a Discord message, someone saying this person's cheating when I've reviewed them 5 times already and they weren't cheating. Yes, there were there are a lot of things. But yeah, you could just see, and there were events that you could just see were going to happen, and there was nothing you could do about
it. I don't know exactly who you're talking about. So you still think, and like you still think about Dancraft to this day? And
yeah, I do. Sorry, go on.
Do you have any like future plans for it, or is your current plan just to have it be as it is?
So yeah, I do think about Dancraft. Usually, I don't like wake up thinking Dancraft. But sometimes a screenshot or an email or just a file will come before me on my computer, and it will bring back a memory of a moment on Dancraft, and it's almost always a positive memory. But yeah, I do reminisce a bit, but I don't like to focus too much on the past. Always thinking forward. And what was the other question? Future plans for Dancraft.
Right.
Yeah, Dancraft's always going to be up and running forever. But in terms of future plans, the problem here is when people hear future plans, what they hear is Dancraft's going to come back and be huge and be what it used to be. And I think the reality is, due to a lot of different factors, mainly being me and the time I have to dedicate to the server, that just isn't possible. So I think, for simplicity's sake, the answer is no, there aren't any future plans for Dancraft, at least the type of plans that people think of when they hear future plans.
Right. I feel like a lot of people just like grasp onto that nostalgic time where it just used to be so good, so perfect. They would come home, hop on, see their buddies on.
Yeah, definitely.
It'll be hard.
Yeah, the thing is, it's obviously Dancraft was different then, but it's also a period in your life. A lot of people, look back fondly on the memories from childhood or a particular time in their life. And chances are it isn't just Dancraft that created that, nostalgic feeling they're getting. And the reality is, even if, say, that exact server was brought back today, things would be very different still. Just the community, the whole Minecraft community's changed. The amount of people playing Minecraft has changed. How educated people are about the game has changed. There are a lot of different factors. Even things like hacks, they've got a lot better now.
Mm-hmm.
The game isn't the same. It's not possible to return to that period, and I think that's what a lot of people want to do. And in that case, I mean, it's impossible, really.
Okay, let's say we time travel right now back to 2013, 2012, the good old days. Would you change anything that you did back then?
I think so. Out of the earlier period, maybe not just 2013, 2014, but up until maybe 2016, I think there's loads of things I would change. I think if there's not something you look back on your past and say you would change that, then I think you're lying to yourself. I think there's always ways you can improve. I think better rule enforcement, like on the server. I think that was a big one. I think the server was managed a lot better at that time than it had been in the future. But there still were, people cheating and getting away with it, things like that. I think as well, updates, I think they could have been better managed. I think we pushed back deadlines quite often. There was, I feel like every other update, the deadline would have been checked, or the release date would have been changed or pushed back. So I think that could have been improved. I think those are the two things that come to mind, but there is loads, to be honest. I would change a lot, yeah.
How often, or like what would often be the reasoning behind delaying stuff or pushing deadlines?
So what would happen, really, things were organized to an extent, but usually I was just so excited to get an update out. I'd want to let everyone know about it. So I'd release a date, I'd get feedback, all of that, and I would work very hard to get the update out. But usually when I announce a release date, say in 2 weeks' time, maybe the update would only be 75% done or something like that. And then even just 1 or 2 issues can push you back a week. So, or maybe not a week, but a few bugs can push you back. Like each bug can take half a day to fix, or even just testing stuff, balancing stuff. There's a lot of work that's easy to forget about at the end stage of an update. So things like beta testing, it'd be bad, but sometimes you'd get beta testers on like the day before a release, and you'd encounter loads of issues. And you'd be like, right, well, we can't release tomorrow. We need to change the date. In reality, what I changed now is, you get it tested and then you let everyone know when it's going to come out. Because that was silly in retrospect, and it did create, I think, a lot of like, maybe not so much like a massive lack of trust, but I think people definitely might not have taken the dates as seriously if we were, known to change them.
Right. Fuck, I forgot the question I was about to ask. Oh yeah, do you think that was also partially like you were really excited too, but also partially because like a lot of players started to lose faith because it was a common reoccurrence for a while, and you would just want to like show people that you're actually doing work and you're doing the best you can?
Yeah, I think I sent you over a timeline of just the big updates that happened on Dancraft, and quite frankly, I was really, really impressed. Not to like blow my own trumpet, but the amount of, when you actually look back on it and you realize there was, maybe only just a few months between, 2 big updates. Those updates do take a lot of time and, development. So really, in the grand scheme of things, I think this isn't really answering the question. But I think there were a lot of updates on Dancrafters in the earlier years. And I think to answer the question, I'm sure part of it was, me wanting to prove people wrong if they thought that release dates weren't correct.
Was there ever a point in time where you thought about just quitting the server and leaving it behind?
The question, you sent over a question regarding selling the server.
Yeah.
There was a time I was approached with a very, very, very big offer for the server, which I considered. I don't know if I ever would have sold it. And I think there has been 1 or 2 times when I was looking to sell the server. Maybe I asked around or made a forum post somewhere or something like that. But I don't think I ever would have sold the server. Dancraft, it meant a lot to me, and it means a lot to me. I don't think I've ever seriously thought about, stopping running the server. I mean, it's called Dancraft after all.
Would you want to drop that number that you were after? Because I'm kind of curious.
No.
All right. Oh, and when you talk about selling the server, do you mean like completely giving up the rights to it, or you mean like passing it under someone else's management?
Yeah, it would be completely giving up the rights. Yeah, that was what that offer was. But there would have been, obviously, if the server was to have been sold, which it never will be now, there would have been a lot of, a lot of stuff would have been in writing in contracts to make sure that, things like ranks were kept, that people were, the server continued to be Dancraft and wasn't just, merged with another server.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you have any stories, little stories behind Dancraft, or stories about like development or the old staff team?
I think there's a story about the first time I ever pulled an all-nighter to work on Dancraft was this is a very silly story. When Dancraft v3 came out, there was a cross-server economy. I don't know if you remember, but that was like a big thing back then. And there was an issue with the database. And I made a post in this development chat saying, can someone take a look at this database? Why is this happening? I didn't realize I accidentally pasted the password for the database into this chat. So you can probably guess what happened next. Someone went into the database and deleted everyone's balance. From that day on, nothing ever like that ever happened again. But everyone's balances were gone, and I had to work out how to get them all back. And it was like, I think already like 11 p.m. It took me literally the entire night, and I had to skip school the next day to restore everyone's balances. But that's a story that sticks out because, it was just such a stupid decision on my part. But I don't think the server just went into maintenance mode. I don't know if anyone's ever known what actually happened. That must have been the start of September in 2013. And then V4, I mean, it's not really a story, but the V4 release was just a complete mess. Just everything. We released V4, and then immediately there was messages from people saying, this isn't working, this is crashing, or all of our logs were just filled with errors. But there were loads of people playing. It just didn't go to plan. There's loads of little small stories, but those are just some of them.
Is V4 the one I'm thinking of? Is that when? Okay, so the server first launched, and then it crashed, and then you launched it again. And I remember hopping in there, and I tried doing Kit Bedrock, and it didn't work. And then you relaunched it, and you made an announcement, and then it crashed again. Was that V4?
Probably. That does sound like V4. I heard the word crash a lot of times, so probably. V4 was basically just a project that was too big for me to take on at the time. Rob was heavily involved in that as well. He was doing, I would say, 50% of the work. It was definitely not all me. But yeah, V4 was, we're taking Dancraft, which was, I think we had 7 or 8 different types of servers to, I think we were introducing 16 different game modes like Faction, Skyblock, Skywars. Or there were 16 different sort of servers in the hub. And that was huge to go to from 8 servers. And it was just like a massive update. And again, we released the date way too early, and things just were not properly tested. Things weren't polished, and there were a lot of other changes. It wasn't just new servers looking to revolutionize like the scene really with, there was meant to be an amazing new anti-cheat, which was all right, but there were false positives. And yeah, there were just a lot of, changes that didn't go as planned.
Right, gotcha. Now, to the juicy stuff. This is what I want to know. What was the true reason for demoting the staff team? Or disbanding, rather.
Honestly, this is the sort of stuff that's very hazy in my memory.
You hated us. That's it.
I honestly don't know. I think just the management of it, it was too tricky. I was never, as everyone knows, I was never a huge fan of like a staff team. I think it was, it was a lot of work for people to do voluntarily. I mean, it wasn't a very rewarding job. I'm sure you said yourself when you look back on it, you wasn't really too sure why, you helped out. And also it seemed, I personally, as a player of the server, I don't know if I would have liked it if another player who was meant to be equal to me would have the power to literally ban me for my life from, this server that I loved based on their judgment alone, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, I'm sure, a staff team does work out for a lot of servers, so definitely I don't think it's all bad, and I don't know if not having a staff team was the right decision. Maybe it wasn't, and that's a likely case. So don't think by me saying that I'm saying, staff is a bad thing, because I definitely don't think it is.
And just to correct you real quick, when I said I didn't, like, I don't know why I did that back then. I mean, like, I made like a shit ton of reports and all this other stuff. I did enjoy my time as a staff. Like, it was hella fun.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and it was fun. I think it was more fun just to mess around with the staff team and just have a good old time. And then whenever instead of like making a report on someone who I knew was obviously hacking, I could just like ban them.
To be fair, yeah, it was a desire to help, I guess. If you saw people cheating on the server and not much was being done about it, you wanted to help. It's good.
Yeah, because I don't know how much like you can really rely on automation to do most of the work. Because a lot of times it's just it's hard to detect some stuff, especially now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I guess the issue as well, like the staff. I think the staff we had, like you, Carbs, Holly.
There's no way you're struggling to come up with these names right now.
British Teen, you're all very skilled. There was no doubt that you were, the best people for the job, but there were bound to be mistakes. Even I made mistakes. I force banned Cubs once. I thought he was cheating. And it's hard to know how to trust that, opinion. If say a staff member bans someone and they're almost certain they were cheating, but then that person comes back and says, "Oh no, I wasn't cheating. I was just shaking my head around." Like, you don't know who to trust, really, or not trust, because it's never really an act of the staff member being malicious, but rather, the staff member
their judgment,
making a mistake. Yeah, it's an honest mistake, and it would have happened very rarely, but it did happen.
I do remember those appeals where people were doing the derp hack, and then they would make an appeal saying I was just spinning my mouse a lot, and they're like running around and shit.
That's such a cheat, isn't it? What do you get from that?
And why did you pick Cubs to assist you and continue development?
Cubs is a very good friend of mine. He's very reliable and he did a good job. So that was really the reason why. He was good at what he did. So yeah.
Now, did me using my Optifine cape to get free apples on a server lead to the disbandment of the staff team?
Did you? I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I can't remember, to be honest. It was a long time ago, over 5 years ago, I think. So
I still remember it to this day. I still kind of regret it, and I'm still not sure if you'd be mad at me like today if I did it again?
I'm not mad at you. No, people make mistakes. I think it was definitely. I definitely don't think you would have done it if you knew it would have demoted you. I think it was more probably like an innocent thing, quite funny. Yeah. It was more
kind of funny.
because it was more because you can't be on one server enforcing these rules where someone, if someone did that, to a new player on Dancraft, that wouldn't be acceptable. But how can you let a staff member go on and laugh about on another server, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I get it. I was kind of boasting about it, but I think like 2 years later, I found the video and I uploaded it. But I don't know if I ever showed you it. I literally like somehow tracked this kid down and gave him my Optifine cape and like 3 stacks of apples. Cause like, man, I fucked up so bad.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it was like a malicious act. It was more just a funny act, but he didn't think it through.
Okay. Why did you decide to run a server and forums on your own funds instead of just shutting it down?
Not a lot of people. I don't think people realize that Dancraft means a lot to me. I wouldn't want to shut Dancraft down. As much as it's a place for everyone else to return to, it's a nice thing for me to look back on as well. I put a lot, like thousands of hours into working on Dancraft, like probably tens of thousands. So yeah, I don't think it's fair as well on players who have, like you said, it was some people's childhood playing Dancraft. I don't think it would be fair to shut that down. So people who have friends as well, if people have sort of made friends that play Dancraft together, they might not have anywhere to go if Dancraft shut down. So yeah, and for the small cost it costs me, I don't think it's worth it.
How much does it cost? Can you say?
No, but it's not much.
I'm a big numbers guy. I really like numbers.
No,
Okay, how would you describe Dancraft in one word?
That's very tricky.
I mean, I have a lot of words. I could toss them your way. I got desolate, abandoned, neglected,
oh wow,
forgotten. You want me to keep going?
I would say happy. It's a happy place. Or fun.
That's so cute. Okay, what are you up to nowadays? Like, what are you working on?
I run a web publishing company. So basically, I run websites and I make money through advertising and things like that. So sort of in a similar vein of work. I have some gaming websites. So yeah, it's quite not an average job. But yeah, I enjoy it, and I'm still sort of continuing the legacy of working for myself.
What kind of games do you play?
I think everyone knows I play CS:GO. But other than that, honestly, not that much. I don't have much time for games anymore. As a kid, I played a lot of RuneScape. That was like before Dancraft period. And then probably like 2014 or 2015, I started to play CS:GO. And then 2018 to 2019, I played a bit of CS:GO, but not really that much. And yeah, for the past year or so, I haven't been playing that many games purely because I just don't have time for it. And it's hard to, when you don't have that much time, it's hard to get into a game. I feel like nowadays a lot of games, like even for example, like Fortnite or Apex Legends, you can't just, well, you can just hop on and play now, but you need to be kind of good at the game, and that takes time. So unless you have a lot of time, I think, to sink into games, at least the type of games I like to play, it's kind of hard to, get into them.
All right, do you have anything to say to the Dancraftians who are probably listening right now?
I guess thank you for everyone, no matter if they've been a rule breaker or one of the loyal members of the server. I think everyone has put a lot of time into the game, and I hope everyone will still be here for years to come to see. Maybe we'll have a little reunion in future, a little Dangames competition or something like that. So yeah, thank you, I guess, and I appreciate everyone.